Good evening and welcome to the council meeting for Monday, January 15th, 2024. Please rise for the playing of the national anthem and a moment of reflection.
Oh, Canada.
Please be seated. At this time, I will look to Councillor Ratzlaff for the land acknowledgement.
The land on which council meets today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many Indigenous peoples made up of First Nation, Inuit, and Métis. The Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement should remind us of our responsibility to ensure the territories on which we live and work, is never emptied, and that we take care of the land and its inhabitants in a way that ensures its future sustainability.
Thank you, Councillor. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight for the first time with council, but I promise to anybody who meets me over the coming days, the last time this year, Happy New Year, and welcome to 2024. The recent cold weather has brought about a number of questions and a very frustrating amount of misinformation, so I wanted to take the chance this evening to provide the community with some information on how the region's shelter system is dealing with the weather and the issues it creates. For starters, residents need to contact 211 to connect with the Niagara Assertive Street Outreach Team if they or someone they know is homeless and in need of help accessing shelter. During cold weather emergencies, the region will be adding resources to try and deal with the individual cases as they arise. All members of the community are welcome to use city facilities to warm up. It must be clearly stated, however, these places to warm up, these are arenas, libraries, swimming pools, other recreational facilities, do not have any additional services and are only open during business hours. These facilities available to warm up are not and cannot function as shelters. The city does not have the staff or the expertise to operate shelters. We will always allow residents to come in and warm up, but city facilities cannot take the place of the Niagara region's shelters. In discussions with the region, we understand that the region does not have the staff available to place in city facilities. I'm putting this out there because there are some who are trying to say that this is, quote, all that needs to be done. That's an unfair characterization. The region does not have the staffing resources to add that much capacity. It should also be stated, Niagara Regional Transit provides free rides on conventional buses in the cities of Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, and Welland for residents traveling to the regionally operated shelters or municipal recreational facilities to stay warm. So again, anybody who needs to warm up, the city's facilities are available and are open during business hours for that purpose. Anybody in the community who knows of someone who's experiencing homelessness and needs to try and get them help, please contact the Niagara Assertive Street Outreach Team at 211. I will commit once again, as I have many times in the past, that I will continue to advocate for more funding from the provincial level to deal with the housing crisis and all of the pieces that come with it around the opioid and mental health crises. I would encourage all members of the community, please reach out to your regional councillors and impress upon them how important this is. As a part of the regional mandate, it is important that regional council and regional staff understand what needs to be done in our community. Some condolences. On behalf of council and city staff, I would like to extend condolences to the family and friends of Louis Mantha, a longtime employee of the city who passed away in December. Louis joined the city in 2000, first as a custodian and then working as a seasonal laborer, truck driver, and eventually becoming a permanent building custodian, spending the majority of his time on site here at City Hall. Many of us will miss Louis' big smile, daily conversations, and his kind-hearted nature. Our thoughts continue to be with his family, his friends, and his colleagues during this difficult time. Louis will be missed by all of us. On January 4th, we had our first flag raising of 2024 in honor of Crime Stoppers Month. Crime Stoppers of Niagara is a citizen, media, and police cooperative program designed to involve the community in the fight against crime and improve the quality of life for all residents in Niagara. The program provides citizens with a means to supply police with information anonymously. Thank you to the Crime Stoppers staff, board, and volunteers for all your work to help keep the city of St. Catharines and the region safe. And thank you to Councillor Stevens for modeling the Crime Stoppers hoodie this evening. Thank you to the residents of St. Catharines for joining myself and council at the annual New Year's Day levy. A big thank you goes out to the Lincoln and Welland Regiment and the 10th Battery Royal Canadian Artillery for hosting the event and helping us start a new year together. Thank you to Councillors Lindell, McPherson, Ratzlaff, and Stevens, as well as Chair Bradley, MPP Stevens, and MP Biddle for joining us. Some business openings. Congratulations to Juan and Julian Fonseca for their grand opening of Plaza Fiesta Latin Grocery and Cafe located at 574 Carlton Street. And thank you to Councillor Stevens for helping to open this location. Be sure to make a visit for all your Latin grocery needs. And Sandra's Home Healthcare opened an office located in the St. Catharines Hospital site on the main floor across from Tim Hortons. Sandra's Home Health Care provides clients with dignified support services that enable them to remain in the comfort of their own homes for as long as they desire. I had the opportunity to meet with and speak with Sandra at the grand opening, and she is a bundle of energy and someone who I know is making an incredibly important impact in our community. Congratulations to CYO Minor Hockey on your recent celebration of your 90th anniversary. I know we have at least one St. Denis alum in the room with us this evening. Thank you to all the players and volunteers who have contributed to the success and the growth of the league over the years. Your dedication, passion, and hard work have made this milestone possible. Here's to many more years of exciting hockey and camaraderie in our community. And for the record, that was Councillor Townsend. He played for St. Denis back in the day. I believe Councillor Miller played for St. Denis as well. Did you guys play together? You played together on the same team? Oh, wow. I don't look forward to them. February 27th, I will be participating in the Big Brothers Big Sisters of Niagara annual Tim Hortons Bowl for Kids' Sake event. As this is a Niagara-wide initiative, I would like to challenge the mayors and staff from other municipalities to lace up their bowling shoes and get involved and try to beat the city of St. Catharines in what I am sure will be the top-notch scores. For over 85 years, Big Brothers Big Sisters has been igniting the power and potential of youth across Niagara. Your support will ensure youth in our community that need it the most have the opportunity to experience life-changing mentorship. Let's fill the lanes of Parkway Social and make a significant impact on the lives of the youth in our community. For more information, visit niagara.bigbrothersbigsisters.ca. As many of you may have heard, I recently partnered with the St. Catharines Public Library for an annual year-round Mayor's Reading Challenge to help people of all ages fall in love with reading. The challenge has a different category from January to December, and all you have to do is read a book that fits into a category each month to complete the Mayor's Reading Challenge. That's 12 books total and only one book a month. You can follow me on Instagram at Matt Cisco and the library at St. Catharines Library for more updates and information about the challenge. And thank you to Councillor Lindell, who I know is participating in the challenge, and a few staff at City Hall who I've managed to convince. My first book was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. The first January is all about books with an interesting cover. And I will admit, I never would have picked this book up to read it, but I have, and it is fantastic. So, strong recommendation from the mayor. Join me at the 25th annual Toque Tuesday Mayor's Pancake Breakfast on February 6th from 7 to 9 a.m. at Market Square in support of community care and raising the roof. The event aims to bring awareness and to raise funds for eviction and homelessness prevention in our community. That is February 6th from 7 to 9 a.m. And finally, on February 27th, you can join me at my annual State of the City address in partnership with the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce. This year's event will take place at Club Roma from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Lunch will be served, and for tickets, you can visit gncc.ca, and I look forward to seeing everyone there. Are there any additions to the mayor's report that any members of council would like to make? I have Councillor Garcia, and then I think Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On last Friday, the 12th, I had the opportunity to represent you and council at a special event that the management company of the Heatherwood Retirement Facility held. And it was very well organized. We got a tour of the whole facility. They have two facilities, one independent living and the other one assisted living. And I've always heard good things about Heatherwood for anybody that I've known that stayed there. So they seem to be doing a good job, and we thank them for all the good work they do for our community that has so many seniors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You took my thunder away this time with the Crime Stopper month and the grand opening of the Plaza Fiesta Latin grocery store and cafe. If you get a chance, pop in there. It's a great grocery store, and they have really good coffee and little snacks and stuff. So it is really good there. It's in St. George's Ward, so it's in a really good spot. One other thing I'd just like to mention that I went with the Chamber of Commerce last Tuesday, and Seasons Retirement Home on Ontario Street is now open. Beautiful facility, and there is openings there, and it's a really nice building. So if anybody's looking for some place to stay, there you go.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Phillips, I just need you to press your button. Gotcha.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to congratulate the staff and the directors of the Grape and Wine Festival for holding an extremely successful ice wine gala Saturday night. I know you were at it, and some of our staff were there. We had between 1,200 and 1,300 guests arrive at the event, almost twice the number that we had last year. It was a tremendous event, and I know you were telling me when we were talking, you had percentages given to you more than I did about the percentages of people coming from the States and coming from outside of Niagara to draw to that event. So it shows the Grape Wine Festival is far-reaching for people throughout the area. So just wanted to congratulate them. It was a great night, and if you haven't been to the power plant in Niagara Falls, it's really worth going to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and I will try and quote the numbers off the top of my head because they are actually very impressive, and I think a lot of credit needs to go to Dorian Anderson and her team. 2023, which I believe was the first year back after COVID, 70% of the guests and the tickets sold were to residents within Niagara. The other 30% were outside of Niagara. This year, double the number of the tickets, as you said, but those numbers are reversed. 70% were from outside of Niagara, 30% from within Niagara, and if memory serves correct, 24% of the tickets were sold to Americans. So a great job in bringing people into the community, and that's what we love to see with those big tourism events. Seeing no other additions, we will go on to the adoption of the agenda, and I will look to the clerk.
This is one amendment to the agenda. So for item 6.11 on the consent agenda, it's the council correspondence report. The second clause is about providing a name to the region for the Niagara Transit Commission Public Advisory Committee. The recommendation is being changed to that council recommend for appointment instead of that council appoint, because it's actually regional council that makes the appointment. And then there's two items of additional correspondence in your Sugar Sync folder. Both are confidential memorandums. One is from the Director of Economic Development and Government Relations, an industry update, and another is from the Deputy Clerk, recommended appointment to Niagara Transit Commission Advisory Committee. And those are your amendments to the agenda.
All right, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended? Councillor McPherson, Councillor Phillips, all those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. I should have mentioned as a part of my mayor's report, I apologize, go Bills. just because I see Councillor Miller on the screen wearing his patented buffalo blue business suit. Item 3 is adoption of the minutes. The council adopt the minutes of the regular council held on December the 11th, 2023. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the minutes? Councillor Townsend, Councillor Kushner, all those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Item 4 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest this evening? Seeing none, we'll move to item 5, which is to move the consent reports. The following items have been requested to be pulled from consent to discussion. Item 6.3, Community Recreation and Culture Services, Neighborhood Micro Grants Pilot Project, pulled by Councillor McPherson. Item 6.9, Planning and Building Services, Resource Implications of Transitioning to Proactive City Enforcement Practices, pulled by Councillor Phillips. Councillor Townsend has pulled item 6.1, Community Recreation and Culture Services, Comparison of Fireworks Displays and Drone Shows. 6.5, Municipal Works and Community Recreation and Culture Services, Cul-de-Sac Naturalization, and 6.6, Municipal Works Forestry Levels. And Councillor Garcia has requested to endorse item 6.11, sub-item 4, resolution from the town of Lincoln regarding provincial commitment to provide municipalities necessary infrastructure funding to support housing from Bill 23. Councillor Stevens has also requested that we endorse item 6.1, sub-item 6 from Thunder Bay regarding advocacy for short-term rentals. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, save and accept those items brought forward for discussion? Councillor Harris, Councillor Phillips. There's not much left on the consent agenda to approve at this point, but we will continue. I will look to the clerk to call the roll for the consent agenda.
Today's consent agenda includes item 6.2, Community Recreation and Culture Services, Seniors Centers Without Walls Program Update. Item 6.4, Financial Management Services, addition to the list of organizations fundraising activities authorized for donation receipts. Port Dalhousie 200th Anniversary. Item 6.7, Planning and Building Services, extending timelines to appeal a penalty notice for extenuating circumstances under the city's non-parking AMPS bylaw. Approval of the report will set a public meeting for our January 29th meeting. Item 6.8, Planning and Building Services, demolition of a non-contributing building in the Port Dalhousie Commercial Corn Harbor area, Heritage Conservation District, and that's for Henley Rowing Facility Finish Tower, 60 Lakeport Road. Item 6.10, Legal and Clerk Services, revised development charge complaint hearing procedures. And item 6.11, Legal and Clerk Services, council correspondence, save and accept for sub-item 4 and sub-item 6, which will be endorsed. Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes?
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes?
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
And Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
And that's carried. Oh, and the mayor.
Yes.
Thank you, and that's carried.
I don't have to vote. All right, moving on. Our declaration to all presenters. We do have a number of individuals making presentations this evening. So, council chambers in all municipalities in our country represent the seed of local democracy. The many acts that govern us understand the necessity of the collective voice when decisions are being made to grow our spaces, pass our bylaws, and to seek opinions into very complex issues, ensuring safe spaces for all in our public discourse. We recognize the right of the majority to decide, the minority to be heard, the public to have an opportunity to participate, and all participants to be treated with courtesy and respect. It is imperative that elected officials, citizens, and staff have input, and it is paramount that we listen to one another and question one another, but that we understand we do this in a way that never undermines any person's ability or their dignity in our chambers. We respect the right for everyone to have an opinion and remind the audience views of the public do not always reflect those of the corporation of the City of St. Catharines. There are no public meetings, so we will move on to our discussion reports. 9.1, Economic Development and Tourism Services 2025 Minto Cup. Prior to discussing the report, board members from the St. Catharines Athletics Lacrosse Club, Paul Coates, President, Todd Zavitz, Treasurer, and Dan Pilon, Board Member, will provide a presentation. Gentlemen, the lectern is yours.
staff for to present this evening. My name is Paul Coates. I am the president of the St. Catharines Athletics Lacrosse Club. That includes both Junior A and Junior B men's programs. I'm here with far left, Todd Zavitz. He is the treasurer of our organization and also a member of the St. Catharines Sports Hall of Fame, the all-time leading scorer for the St. Catharines Falcons. And with him as well, a gentleman that you know well, Dan Pilon, also a member of our board, and he was the lacrosse lead for the recently completed Canada Summer Games. Also like to acknowledge in our gallery tonight, the chair of the 2022 Canada Summer Games, also currently the chair of Sport Niagara, and assisting with our bid to the Ontario Junior A Council, and that is Mr. Doug Hamilton. We are here to request support for our bid to host the 2025 Minto Cup, the National Junior Men's Lacrosse Championship. We will look to provide a brief history of the Minto Cup, our city's history with this championship, and the sport of lacrosse, along with our request and the financial and community details to support our request. And just before I go any further, it is a very cool night, so I wanted to make sure that the mayor was warm, so I just briefly have an athletics sweater that I hope we can get on camera here before hopefully he puts that on, but that is one of our souvenirs from this past year. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
I would just like to say thank you kindly, Councillor Harris. It is definitely not too small, and I can hear you over there. And I will happily throw this on before the end of this presentation.
Thank you. No, I won't comment, Councillor Harris. If I could have the next slide, please. This sport is a part of our fabric in our community. It has been around for over 147 years, and continuing to host and support these events is an integral part of maintaining that commitment to our players, family, and alumni. Over 700 players, part of our minor lacrosse association, boys and girls box and field. Our players populate national teams, professional teams, and national and provincial associations. Past 15 years, over 50 alumni play in the National Lacrosse League. That is the second most of any minor program in Canada. Over 4,500 games played, including some that are members of the, that are employees of the City of St. Catharines. More professional players are graduates of Brock University's lacrosse program than any other Canadian university. So as you can see on the screen, athletics established in 1877, we run the Junior A and Junior B team. The B team was formerly Spartans, St. Catharines Minor Lacrosse, Brock University, St. Catharines Old Boys Lacrosse Association, one of the largest in the country, and I'm proud to be a member of that. We are the home of the Ontario Lacrosse Hall of Fame, and as I indicated, the alumni playing or officiating and coaching in the National Lacrosse League. The 2025 pardon me, the history of the Minto Cup, if I could have that next slide, there we are, is held in Ontario every 3 years. The financial support we are requesting today will be part of our bid to the Ontario Junior A Lacrosse League, and this is only, so tonight is only step one. A round-robin competition will be held over the course of 7 days with 3 travel and practice days on either end. So again, this is a national championship. It is hosted in rotation. Alberta has it this summer. It is in BC in 2024, and then back in Ontario in August of 2025. And I will introduce my co-speaker, short on words, Mr. Pilon.
Thanks, Paul, I think. So briefly, this is a process of the outline, because I think it's important for everyone to have an understanding of how it works from this side. So we're here tonight to hopefully discuss aspects of the financial package of our bid book. The bid book is due to the Ontario Junior Lacrosse League by the end of the month, so by February 1. And then over the course of February, they have a date that's to be determined, which will probably be mid-February. That's where we have to do a presentation to that league. At that point, the likelihood is that we'll know within 24 hours whether we're the successful bid or not, and then they notify Lacrosse Canada from that point because it is a national championship. The obvious comparator that you can think of is the Memorial Cup for junior A hockey within Canada. Next slide. When we take a look at the Minto Cup in the city of St. Catharines, we certainly do have a history with it, although it's been 24 years since we last hosted it here in the city of St. Catharines. We're 6-time Minto Cup champions, amongst the leaders nationally with respect to the number of championships that we have won. Last hosted in 2001 at Jack Aicliffe Arena, and it filled the barn every single night. It was a 6-game series with 3,500 plus people packing that arena every single evening. In 2020, we were the approved host. Many thanks to the work and the presentation of the gentleman in the back of the audience, Mr. Doug Hamilton, who thanks to the leadership with Canada Games and their support and his presentation, we were able to acquire the Minto Cup, which was the first time in quite some time. Amidst all of the items that certainly were lost through COVID, it's certainly a small piece, but we obviously there was no games that occurred in 2020, no games that occurred in 2021. However, there was no Minto Cup. There was a provincial championship of which the St. Catharines team was the Ontario champion. Unfortunately, there was no Minto Cup to play in that given year. In 2025, I think one of the key items that we want to talk about is that we have projected to have a nationally competitive team. The key point of that is that there's an automatic entry to your local club as the host team, and so therefore we're not just there. We're there with a competitive team that's bringing in families, friends, packing it for local games, including engagement by the community, engagement in the media, all of those good, wonderful things that occurs when you have a local team playing in the event.
So this is the partnership that we are working with towards the city of St. Catharines. The Athletics Lacrosse Club is officially requesting $50,000 in funding for 2025, waiving of rental fee for the use of the Meridian Center in 2025. The budget for the event will be $500,000. And this is the funds requested is offset costs of hosts organizing solely because we are solely responsible for that budget. Further grant requests, Provincial Opportunities Ontario Sport Hosting Grant will be applied for once that, fingers crossed, that we are able to receive the bid through the Ontario Junior A Lacrosse Association.
So briefly, I think one of the things that's important, certainly following up a slide where we're asking for financial support of the city, and we recognize that the dollars, those are municipal dollars, is obviously the economic impact. So the issue for us here is that this is not conjecture, this is not a maybe, this is not a potential. Lacrosse in the 2022 Canada Games had more spectators than any other sport competition at the Games. We had 16,000 spectators over the course of 2 weeks. We had over 100,000 views online as the most watched game online as well, too, with Canada Games. So this isn't conjecture when we talk about having potentially 15 to 18,000 individuals between it. We've done it, we've seen it. Certainly in my role as lacrosse lead at the Games, we lived through it, and we believe it was an incredibly successful piece. Certainly, once again, with the thanks of the support of Canada Games as they brought that back. The Lacrosse Canada feedback post-Canada Games was that this was the best national event that has ever been put forward for lacrosse in Canada. We need to build upon those successes locally by hosting additional national events and leveraging the facilities and all the other items that come along with hosting those kind of events. The legacy of an event such as the Canada Games is that it's certainly not possible without our local lacrosse community. And now if we imagine an event similar to the Canada Games, however, that has a team comprised of local Niagara athletes and St. Catharines players playing on a national stage. So this isn't a maybe when we take a look. These are STEAM data, so this is the numbers when we take a look. I think the key item right there is a projected economic impact of $5.3 million within the city of St. Catharines in the Niagara region. So that's significant, that's huge when we take a look at all the hotel stays, the food and beverage, et cetera. It's a significant piece for us. I'm up. We should have done this better. Next slide. Community impact from a legacy perspective. I think one of the keys that we're talking about here is that this is an event that we're looking to host in a facility that can showcase the Minto Cup, and we have a historic lacrosse community to support that locally. We need to leverage the assets in place, which is why we're looking to host it in the Meridian Center with the given spectator capacity that exists there. The asset in itself, there's minimal programming at that period of time. During late August, that's when this takes place. So we're leveraging also a downtime for that event to be able to fill it with individuals who are in there purchasing and filling the event, purchasing food and beverage and all those wonderful things in the facility from that side. I believe you have some information in front of you as well from the general manager of the facility as part of the bid. And I also think that the value of assets from hosting the Canada Games supports items such as this. So we talk about, you can see in some of the photos, you'll see the turf floor that exists that we currently use at Canada Games. It's certainly an item that can be used and shipped and used in the Meridian Center as well from that side. So when we talk about building upon that local lacrosse legacy, additionally, it's the volunteer base. And we had a significant volunteer base to be able to host lacrosse during the Canada Games. That volunteer base is currently in use in one of the huge items that Sport Niagara is bringing to the table in terms of being able to support the items that we're doing. And additionally is building upon that local legacy. Canada Games facilitated the return of lacrosse to the Canada Games permanently, and that's a significant due part to Mr. Hamilton in terms of the work that was there, but that's a permanent return after it hadn't been part of those games for 36 years. And as part of that, this summer actually, St. Catharines is hosting the men's and women's national team final selection camp for the first time ever here in the city of St. Catharines in the first week of July. So we're starting to see small wins simply by having the facilities, by having the support, and by showing that we have a local lacrosse community that can support that. And we're going to build upon that with additional future national and international level style events.
And then also, like, and I just before we finish out that last slide there, just our junior athletics club is very involved in the community. We are involved in the food drive. Recently, Joe fed his New Year's Day, Feed the Homeless. We look forward every year to the Mayor's Breakfast and also the Niagara Peninsula Children's Center that we are involved in participating at their breakfast as well. So we try and get very engaged in the community. So that is an oversight on what we're looking for. I thank the mayor, members of council, city staff, some of you who have done a great amount of work, which I thank. And we look forward to being able to host this event in August of 2025. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Coates and Mr. Pilon and Mr. Zavitz. Man, a few words, but you did a fantastic job. Any questions or comments for the presenters? Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the presenters. The funds that were given in the 2020 application or the 2020 tournament that never happened, what happens with the funds that you would have received?
We never received any funds in 2020.
Okay, no, thank you. And then my other question is in regards to, have any conversations started with Minister Lumsden's office to decide whether the province would be open to also financially supporting this great event?
If I could just ask whoever's answering the question just to come up to the lectern so that it is picked up by the microphones.
So I think based on the timeline of August 2025, we have to wait and ultimately until we win the bid with the Ontario Junior Lacrosse Council. At that point, we will move forward with the provincial grant.
So there would be obviously an ask in excess of the 120,000 to host this event?
With the province?
With the province, correct.
Yeah, is that, I'm looking at Mr. York. Yes, so yes, okay. That's correct.
Thank you. I was certainly fortunate enough to be in the barn in 2001 when St. Catharines did win the 2001 Minto Cup, so I'm excited to see this happen. And as a proud graduate of Holy Cross, where I would say some of the best St. Catharines athletics attended, I look forward to seeing what happens with this. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenters. I was also at Garden City Arena, Jack Aycliffe Barn, and it was a thrilling series. And some of those players, of course, went on to play professional lacrosse for a lot of years with great success. In terms of other sources of fundraising, I know one of the legacies of the 2022 Summer Games was Sport Niagara and them maybe lessening the burden of the monies coming out of local taxpayers. Is there that or any other sources of revenue that we can draw upon to help out to lessen the load?
To you, Mr. Mayor. I think the key for us right now, Councillor, is that at this point, step one really is for us is to ensure that we're the actually chosen bid from all of the teams, the 11 teams that are part of the Ontario Junior Lacrosse League. At that point, we think there's probably a whole host of other sources of funding that we can look, because as we've referenced, the budget is not small. It's a large national event that takes on exposure with TSN and other significant areas. So I think we're going to need to be kind of getting to work there at finding other potential opportunities. So we'll be looking at that once we recognize that we're the selected bid from the Ontario Junior Lacrosse League. So bringing some support to that table when we do that bid is, I think, a strong part of what that looks like.
Thank you. And thank you for taking leadership roles in bringing this bid to St. Catharines in 2025.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the presenters. Great presentation. Just a question so that council understands and anyone watching. So you have 3 provinces involved. Does the province holding it automatically rotate so that it's Ontario's turn, but it's trying to decide who in Ontario gets it? Is that what we're doing?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Garcia, yes. So there's a league in British Columbia, a league in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and a league in Ontario. And when it's hosted in that individual area, the champion of the league in that year plus the host automatically get in, along with the champion of British Columbia and the champion of the Alberta League.
Right. So, so with your bid, are you going to be competing against other Ontario clubs, or?
One other club from Ontario that would be included, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a member of the St. Catharines Sports Hall of Fame Board, as you know, we have a display at the Meridian Center focused strictly on lacrosse. I'm just inviting you, when we get the Minto Cup, to come to the board to ask us what we can do to help you as far as display more lacrosse mementos that you might have or something like that, because I think it's something that we need to. If we're going to have that many people watching, we need something in the Sports Hall of Fame to really foster the sport. So I invite you to come to one of our meetings and tell us what we can do to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenters. And this is just, I guess, for clarification for the people watching at home and taxpayers. What you're asking for is for the commitment that the city will give you to help this. If the bid fails, there is no financial money given from the city to you. It's only if you get this bid, right? I just want to make that clear to people, because I think some people might not understand it. And I think it's great that we're doing this. I mean, the lacrosse in the city has always been great. I mean, I had 2 uncles who are now, they're passed away. They're both in the Canadian and the Ontario Lacrosse Hall of Fame. And lacrosse has kind of not been on the national level here for St. Catharines, but at one time St. Catharines was it for lacrosse. So this is very good to bring back to the city.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, gentlemen, thank you for the presentation. Mr. Coates, I just wanted to say, Councillor Harris, it fits. Maybe it's a touch too big. It feels comfortable. It feels like a winner, a 2025 winner. Can I get a councillor to move the motion to receive the delegation? Councillor Phillips and Councillor Stevens. The council received the delegation from the St. Catharines Athletics Lacrosse Club. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And can I get a councillor to move the recommendation in the report? Councillor Dodge, you were quick on that button. I'm going to go with Councillor Dodge and Councillor Harris on this one. Councillor Dodge and Councillor Harris. So we have the motion up on the screen. Are there any questions or comments from council? I am seeing Councillor Garcia. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just through you, a question to staff for clarification and those watching. Number one, the funds that we're talking about are provided through the municipal accommodation tax, so that's not, we don't need a separate source for that. And secondly, Can you please comment on your assessment in the report that with us providing the in-kind use of the Meridian Center, that the Meridian Center estimates that it will be revenue neutral? If you can explain how that works.
There we go. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Garcia, you are absolutely correct. Our operator, ASM Global, is assuming, based on the attendance projected and the economic impact, that they'll recoup those costs, those in-kind fees, through the sale of tickets, food, beverage, the ancillary costs, or ancillary revenues.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Garcia. Any other questions or comments? All right. Seeing none, we have a recommendation on the floor, and I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Garcia?
Yes?
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes?
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
And Mayor Sisko.
Yes.
And that's carried.
All right. Item 9.2, Community Recreation and Culture Services, Programs and Cultural Services, Niagara Folk Arts Festival 2023 report and 2024 to 2026 funding request. Prior to discussing the report, I will call upon Pam Seabrook, Fundraising and Events Manager, Emily Kovacs, ED/CEO, and Melinda Chartron, Board of Directors Vice Chair, from the Niagara Folk Arts Multicultural Center to provide a presentation. And the lectern is yours.
We're good. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, councilors, city staff who I work with so tightly every year. Thank you so much for your continuing support, councilors, and those in the gallery tonight. Thank you for letting us come. There's great excitement for our new way forward, and I'm very happy to share this with you tonight. We'll start with our short presentation.
My name is Antena Ayanso. I am the president of the Ethiopian Community Association in the Niagara region.
Hi, my name is Arlene Alerta. I'm the first vice president of Filipino-Canadian Association of Niagara.
My name is Leah Zohorchak, and I'm actually the treasurer for the Canadian Slovak League Branch 31 here in St. Catharines.
How I connect my culture with my life in Canada. There is a lot of connections. We're both welcoming culture. Ethiopia is known for hospitality. We know Canada as a giving country.
The Folk Arts Festival is actually the longest running festival in Canada, and I think it's essential for us in general, not just St. Catharines, not just Niagara, but worldwide. We need that sense of community while also maintaining our individuality. We don't all have to be the same, but we can treat everyone with the same levels of respect and dignity.
A significant moment in our event today would be first the coffee ceremony, because Ethiopia is a welcoming country, known for its hospitality, and the way we show newcomers is by setting up a coffee ceremony and inviting them coffee in a very unique way.
Since Niagara region is a diverse community, everybody will share and learn what everybody has to offer. They'll learn our culture, and if we go to a different ethnic group, we could learn their culture and their traditional food, their folk dance, and everything else. And also, I guess, meeting other people.
The Folk Arts Festival is an expression of all of the unique cultures and a way to celebrate that together. It demonstrates not just each individual heritage, but our ability to come together while still having individual expression.
My advice to the younger people
Don't be afraid to be yourself, because that's what makes it the most beautiful.
To be hungry for more understanding and knowledge about other cultures. Because culture gives you context, culture gives you perspective.
We're gonna support our association, and we're also gonna help and try to support you guys.
The Folk Arts Festival needs to continue for many reasons, but at its core, it's that celebration of who we are, and we want to gift that to you so you can be a part of us.
Thank you very much. I thought it would be best to hear why the festival needs to keep going from those who actually put on the festival, not just me, so it's a community effort. Melinda Chartrand is our Vice President Chair for the Board of Directors. And did you want to bring greetings from Emily in particular?
Quickly, bonsoir. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. I have a long tradition in the Francophone families at the Club LaSalle to be part of this festival. And unfortunately, our board chair, Bob Oleski, is working, saving the residents and keeping the residents of St. Catharines safe. And Emily Kovacs, unfortunately, has the flu, so she's unable to attend this evening. So I will be here to answer any questions if you have anything that our excellent festival producer cannot answer.
So generous. All right, so the 2023 report talks about what we did with the funding that we received for 2020, 21, 22, 23. I am very proud to state that we were the festival and event that continued in-person live events throughout the entire COVID shutdown. We followed protocols, what was allowed. We brought art to those in the community. We had concerts, we had cultural dance performances. We did online, of course, arts and crafts that were live with cultural persons. Through that, we really learned that there were items outside of the month of May that were of interest and that needed to be recognized. And so I have the slides, if we can just bring up the next one. All right, there's our land acknowledgement. Next, please. All right, so for those that may not know, the festival uses art in all forms to overcome barriers of race, language, religion, culture, and providing opportunities for cultural expression. Cultural heritage retention is important. Yes, we want our newcomers and immigrants to feel welcome here and to still flourish here in St. Catharines, but they have to still maintain their sense of selves as to what the video talked about, our culture, ourselves, welcoming us and letting us share with you. Next slide, please. So our agreement is that we will engage clubs and experts to revitalize and modernize the festival. We need to move the pattern that we have used for the last several decades into something that is going to work for the 21st century. It's very difficult to balance that tradition and what the expectations are from our club members and our volunteers and what will work for going forward so that we can continue to be sustainable. The Ambassador Ball in particular, we need to change that to our main fundraiser, not just a celebration of internal ambassadors, though their volunteerism is greatly appreciated. And we have to adapt to our changing environment of our audience. So we are combining events, therefore trying to find cost cutting. So instead of having 9 events that's run by me in the office, we're trying to amalgamate those, save on costs, save on persons. Next slide, please. It's the volunteer base, which I'm sure you've heard other events state that after COVID, we didn't have all the volunteers come back. We've lost our engagement with them, and in the festival, the Niagara Folk Arts Festival world in particular, they're elder volunteers. These are persons that have been, some have been there since 1968, which, God bless, their wealth of knowledge of how to do things is wonderful. We just need to transfer their knowledge into how do we connect with those that are coming new. So who 40 and under, who 30 and under, who 20 and under that can come and step up and help run and help be the leaders that, that the cultural groups need, and of course us, we also need to do that. So we're asking that our $41,000 value has not changed since 2016. So we'd like to combine that also with our $4,600 service in kind that we would get. That service in kind is no longer part of the ask across the board. So with inflation, et cetera, it's $56,000. I'd like to round that up to 60 because I like nice round numbers. It's much easier. And those that came to the events for 23, I hope you recognize that things were changing, that we are trying to definitely move forward in a more professional manner. That can be only achieved not just by me. I am the one person. I am the festival office. There's only me. When we had some grants this past year, we had extra staff persons. It was apparent that if we have extra hands that are capable of running in a festival and have that training, that the quality of what we present is definitely significantly better and improving, and again, moving forward, but keeping our traditions with us. Next slide, please. All right, so that concludes the first part of the ask. So that is increasing our ask for 24, 5, 6. This is the second part, celebrating diversity beyond the month of May. As I stated, during COVID, we had the opportunity, and thank you very much, Council, for allowing us to spend our monies that we received through our services agreement throughout the 12 months, not just in the month of May. And that is when other cultural groups came forward with, oh, wonderful, now we can celebrate something that's not just in May. They want to be part of May, but there's 11 other months that we need to recognize that there are cultural events that happen. In particular, the Asian Water Lantern event, which is now in August, and the Indigenous Stories by the Fire event, which is in September, were created. These came from the cultural groups. To us, we really would like to have something. Great, so now we've made a model, and those models have a budget, how it will lay out, what staffing needs, etc. So that is what we're using for our next ask. Next slide, please. Here are the persons that have come forward. Lunar New Year, Eid, that's 2 per year. Holi, the Migrant Workers Recognition and Celebration. That we don't know when that would be, agricultural cycles, etc. Day of the Dead, Diwali, Irish music outside of St. Patrick's Day, Indigenous event, shoulder months, and that should be in September, in St. Catharines. Cultural International Film Festival and the Anti-Racism Doll Collection installation and discussion. That's just since August. So now we have 2 more that have come forward. So there's a need. These groups do not have a formal organization. They cannot have monies funneled to them. They will not meet the criteria for the SKIP program. So they're coming to us to help understand how to get a budget going. Their passion is about their cultural presentation. The festival office would give the expertise of how to execute that. And these would be seed monies. That's how we used it for the Asian Water Lantern Festival through the City of Welland and the Indigenous Stories event. We were given seed monies from those municipalities and have developed a program. So that's what we would hope with this. Over the next 3 years, we could use these and tweak it, fix it as we go along. So at the end of the 3 years, we would have a product. Next slide, please. All right, so on the creation model that I have done for the other 2 events, it's between $8,000 and $10,000 per event. However, right now we're gonna try and commit to 10 events. There could be more, as I've just stated. So it's an $80,000 ask. The other bit is that this office, the festival office, is not allowed to apply through the SKIP funding because it would be the same pot of money, which is understandable. But this, if we were to be allowed to apply to SKIP, this would help us with a new group that would come forward that wasn't anticipated, or that the group would become ready to do their presentation, and we would be more guiding of the logistics and the insurance and all those kinds of things. So we would not want to have to come to council for each ask. This is why if we could have the permission to go through the SKIP program, that would be absolutely easier for all of us. Next slide, please. All right, so I hope you recognize and agree with me that the makeup of St. Catharines has changed from a European majority of newcomers and immigrants who were the founders of the festival in 1968. Thank you, Mr. Ruff, for that. And we now have a more diverse population, in particular Spanish language, Arabic language, various Middle Eastern cultures arriving. We have the Syrian and Afghan refugees. We are working with the Ukrainian community as well for their persons coming. And the Migrant Worker Association in particular, we really need to lift them up as well. So I hope that you would agree that an expansion of the programming to a year-round delivery would better serve the evolving needs of St. Catharines residents. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Seabrook. Do we have any questions for the presenters? All right, Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to the presenters. Good job, very well. And the festival is very, it was nice. I thought it was run very well and attended very well. And just one question. I see the City of Welland, you said got some funding for the lantern. What about City of Niagara Falls? Did you get any funding, or have you asked for funding from them?
Yes, unfortunately, the City of Niagara Falls has a very strict policy that you must have an address in the City of Niagara Falls to be eligible, even though our programming would happen in the City of Niagara Falls with City of Niagara Falls residents, we do not qualify.
Okay, yeah, because I noticed some of the groups, was it the Hindu one or something, is based in Niagara Falls or something. They're open house and that, so you can't.
We can, but the Holi and Diwali organizing groups are not officially connected with that open house group at this time. That's what I mean, that they're very grassroots, so.
Right. They like to keep all the casino money in Niagara Falls and don't want to share it.
The infamous casino money. Doesn't get mentioned at St. Catharines Council very often. It's usually regional council. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Pam, for that presentation. A couple of questions. Councillor Stevens just asked about Niagara Falls. What about Niagara region? This is supposed to be the Niagara folk arts. Are they contributing?
The regional funding stream, Niagara Investment in Culture, canceled or stopped being functional in, I think it was 2020. The region cut that funding, so there is no funding portal at this time to even apply for any kind of cultural funding of any kind.
Okay. What about grants? Are you applying for grants for this expansion, or?
Yes. So right now, the center is in recipient of a Community Services Recovery Fund, and that is to talk about getting our volunteers, figuring out how to get our volunteers back engaged. We have employed 2 persons, and it runs until the end of June, at the end of which we would have a volunteer guidebook that would be specifically tailored to our cultural club members, but open to the community if you glean the best practices that we have. That is through the center. That is not through the festival. But the festival will benefit from the results that would happen. There also are 2 other applications that we're making at this time for going forward until 2027, which includes anti-racism cultural events. If you have an event that offers a space for community, open dialogue, promotes diversity, this is your application. They are run through the Canadian Heritage Department. And the other one is the Tourism Growth Grant, which is literally to bring those who are not from St. Catharines, come see us, come be part of us. And this is what I would hope that one of these events could be an anchor for.
Thank you, Pam. And one last question to you, Mr. Mayor. What do individual clubs now have to do to participate? Do they have to fund some of their event, or?
So the clubs do all of their own fundraising, volunteer organizing, all that is internal. All their expenditures, revenues, that's theirs. The festival helps with logistic guidance, marketing, and as it will be for this year, I know we are going to have to set up a volunteer crew, for lack of a better word. The clubs are suffering greatly from lack of volunteer support. Some had to cut back their hours, some had to cut back what they were offering, and 6 groups couldn't even mount an open house because they just didn't have the persons to come and do it. So I also, through our federal grants that we get, I help pay for the artists and cultural presentations that happen at those open houses, again, to try and alleviate the expenses that they have.
Thank you. That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks. Hi, good to see you. Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to ask about sponsorship. Beyond, I know that you're sponsored by the city, Canadian Heritage, and that. Is there an opportunity, because I know with the DTA's Festival of Holi, there was sponsorship money that came from local, downtown businesses and restaurants that supported it. Is there an opportunity, or are you looking at creating more robust sponsorship packages for the business community or other organizations?
So 2 parts. Okay. One part is we really need to have a product that I feel confident enough to present to a sponsor. Okay. We're this close. We're getting there. Okay. Melinda, maybe you can speak to the festival committee that's now going to get together through the board, and that is part of the stewardship that we're following. That is recognized. We need to do that. Okay. The Holi event that was held with partnership with the Downtown Association, wonderful model of how local businesses that have an interest really did support that event. We hope to keep that momentum going. That group, the Downtown Association, doesn't have the capacity to continue that partnership, and they're hoping that we can take it over. It's a great fit, and yes, we would absolutely follow that path as an example.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the presenter. My question is, you mentioned federal support. What about provincial supports? Is there any, what type of funding is the province providing?
Right. Again, we're back to what product do we have to offer. So there was a great program called Celebrate Ontario, then it became Reconnect Ontario. They changed the criteria last year that it must be a multiple day event. The festival does fit that criteria, but these smaller events, that's the ones that I'm speaking to directly. They will not fit that criteria. So we have to figure out how I can get the smaller groups to have an arc of participation so that the grant body would understand we're presenting 10 opportunities or we're presenting 8 opportunities. So they are 8 days, they're just 1 day at a time. I don't know if that's going to be acceptable because they're talking about tourism and overnight stays and people traveling back and forth. So that's part of the advisor that I have through the province to find out if we could be qualified for that.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So from what I understand, the Reconnect Ontario grants itself, you can get up to, I think it's 150,000, but it has to be at least 2 days long, if I'm correct. But do you know, and I think this was where you're going with this, is it, would each open house receive that funding, or would it be the festival as a whole? Is that kind of what you're trying to figure out? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, it's my understanding it would be my office would be the body to apply. With the support of the open houses, because again, they're not organized enough to do that. We also have the small new events that have come forward. Again, they don't have the legitimacy, just a lot of passion to have their events. So again, that would be through the Multicultural Center through me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you tell us statistics-wise the number of people that come from outside St. Catharines to the event, whether it be just from Niagara or from outside of Niagara, and how many people actually are going to stay at a hotel?
Right.
Do you keep those statistics for us? Can you give us those?
I cannot give you those statistics. That is part of our modernizing. We need to get those numbers from our open house club members. And right now, we don't have that mechanism in place. This is what Melinda can speak to, that was identified as a number one concern, that we need to know our numbers. I can tell you that 80% of the persons that come to the events are St. Catharines, and everyone else is Niagara. Not a lot of people identify themselves as either from the States or from other countries. We hear my aunt came and she's here from Germany and she happens to be in town. Those aren't numbers that we really want to include. We want to be as transparent and accurate as we can. So I will stand here and say that we had close to 7,000 visitors last year, and we'll say that they are Niagara/St. Catharines focused.
Thank you. And in the years that I've been on council, it seems that the number of open houses has decreased significantly. And on the screen it said we had 14. I think it was 14 last year. What's the reason for the decrease? Is it because of an aging population within those communities and they can't get the youth out to work, to volunteer, or exactly because we've got to get it boosted up? We got to get it back to where it was, and I don't know how you're going to do it without those volunteers or without advertising. What do you see?
So the numbers pre-COVID, 2019, we had 23 open houses. Wonderful. COVID comes back, we have 7. Wow. This year we had 16. The main concern that we hear from the clubs, and this is part of the grant that I was speaking of, the services refund, the services recovery fund, is that we are speaking with the clubs directly. What are your problems? What are your hurdles? What are your barriers? We want to help you. And it keeps coming back, volunteers. So we have volunteers that are elder and they are aging out, and we have a lack of attracting volunteers that can take their place, and also internal training. You know, Pam was there and has been the treasurer for 25 years, but I haven't taken the time to train my replacement, so that's another step that needs to happen. Again, this is reflecting back to we need to move forward and the clubs need to come along. They have been very supportive of all of our interviews that we've had through September through December, and they are all on board and recognize, yeah, it's kind of that time where if we're going to continue going forward, we need to think differently. So I hope that that answers your question for where we're going. Okay, thank you.
I'll add to that because it is important. And it was just the Nomination and Membership Committee just met this week, and we have approved our terms of reference. Part of our strategic plan is to develop a festival planning committee. Pam is coordinating a meeting with the clubs in 2 weeks, and from there we're going to get some members to sit on our planning festival committee to look at exactly what you're talking about, reporting mechanisms. This is the same conversation I had in 2008 when I was the chair of the festival, on the board of the Folk Arts Festival back then. It's trying to get that information and that data because it does have an impact on when we're applying for grants. As Pam has mentioned, there's been a lot of changes. I'm with the Francophone community and we do Celebrate Canada grants, and it's a challenge to get the information that they need. So I think it's important that we bring our clubs together. We bring some more training. As Pam mentioned, we're looking at volunteers, bringing more training and reporting mechanisms that can assist with the clubs. So that is going to be a priority for the Planning Festival Committee starting hopefully in mid-February.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My questions have been answered, but I'd make a comment that folk arts has been a very important cultural part of our community. I was on it in the 1970s with Steve Ruff, by the way, and it's unfortunate that it's in decline, but with an aging population, it would be very difficult to bring it back. Thank you for your good work.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. I do want to give a glimmer of hope. I have to say that the Ethio-Canadian group, brand new group, vibrant. They have young persons. They have the energy. They have a great leadership that is embracing the move forward, that there's no formula. And we do have 3 new cultural groups that are interested in joining us this year with the same motivation. We use the Ethio group, and they're very generous with their paths to success. We're copying that, and we're moving it forward. So I am hopeful that we can turn some things around. Maybe not all of them. I mean, the Netherlands group did fold prior to COVID. That's a great example. There's no longer a Lithuanian group. Just, again, loss of energy through those clubs. So I am absolutely trying to fight that as best I can.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. And seeing no other questions, thank you very much for the presentation. Can I have a councillor to move and second the presentation? Councillor Phillips, Councillor Kushner, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So we have a recommendation. Do I have a counselor to move and second the recommendation on the screen? Counselor Stevens, is there a seconder for the recommendation on the screen? Counselor Lindell. All right, any questions or comments with respect to the recommendation? Counselor Miller.
It says based on council's decision regarding a funding model. So when is that not to happen now?
So, Counselor, the 41,000 is what is in the budget at this time. So, if there is a desire to change it, it should be indicated in this motion, and then an amendment needs to be brought to through the budget process.
Okay, I'd like to see that amendment and see the support folk arts is looking for. So if that's not what's on the table now, could that maybe be more explicit in this motion?
So then you would be asking to make an amendment to increase the funding to $70,000 a year?
Yes.
Okay, so I will look to the mover. Is that a friendly amendment? That's a friendly amendment. And to the seconder, is that a friendly amendment? Councilor Lindell?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that's a friendly amendment.
Yeah, okay, that was really it. I think from me, certainly, I think we can do our part to help the festival adapt and change as it moves forward in the 21st century.
Okay, so we're just going to make sure that we get the amendment written out appropriately. The council authorized the funds of, this may require some clerking just because with the budget process.
So I wouldn't, if you want to amend the budget tonight, I think our intention was that if you in theory support the agreement, approve it tonight and deal with all the budget items on budget night, if you want to amend it tonight, then you would need to include a motion that the 2024 to 2026 operating budget be amended to increase the annual funding by $70,000 per year.
So I'm going to jump in here, as I am not actually a part of this budget process at this time. So can I suggest that council forward a request to amend the budget to the January 22nd budget committee meeting to increase the budget to $70,000? Because otherwise I have to give up the chair because I'm not voting on the budget amendment.
Miller, who put forward the amendments, thumb is up.
That's a good thing from Councillor Miller, and I'm assuming that is okay by the mover and the seconder. Okay, so I think we have the process cleared here, and I apologize. This is still a very new process for budget stuff, so I apologize to folks. Council forward, request to amend the budget at the January 22nd council budget meeting to $70,000. Okay. Councillor Miller, you still had the floor. Did you have anything else you wanted to add? I can't see him, so no? Okay, wonderful. I have Councillor Townsend next.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, my question, there was just a mention of skip funds, and so that each of the open houses could apply for skip funding. From what I understand, the skip funding is already budgeted for. What kind of impact would this have if it was opened up for each of these open houses to apply for it? Would it have an impact?
To change the funding model. All right, Mr. Christie.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would have a significant impact if each of the open houses applied, Councillor. So typically, SKIP allows for festivals over 2 days or longer to apply. In this case, it would either be the Folk Arts Festival that would apply as a whole, or the individual sites. We just haven't had those applications, or enough of them anyway, to provide you a better example. But there would be, depending on what they apply for, of course, in terms of monetary value, it may have a significant impact on the overall SKIP budget.
Thank you. And through this, then we're not changing that with this motion. We're not changing that.
No, as it reads right now, this is just a straight request to increase.
Thank you.
All right, I have Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I guess I would just like to add that, I mean, this Folk Arts Festival is just, it's been going on forever. It's a great event. Hopefully it starts bringing more people to the area, but it also lets the residents in our city see all the different cultures and that. I remember going to these when they were held at the Garden City Arena, and all the different groups had their booths there. So everything was at just one thing, and it was only a day or two. There was actually a little parade, I think, too, and everything else. So the way they're doing this now, it's great to see these open houses, and some of them have their own facilities, so they're, decorated in their culture and everything else, and it's just, it's great. And if they've got a new funding, a new process they're trying to do to bring more people in to see these, and I think they will with newcomers here in the area. They bring other people from out of town to see that, and it'll be a win-win for our city. So it is a great event, and just more people need to get out. Last year, I think I only missed one open house. It was really good, and they're just a great thing to see other the cultures in the area and stuff. I just think it's a wonderful event, and everybody needs to get out there and see this more. Yeah.
All right, Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe you and the clerk have already clarified it, but as the chair of the Budget Committee, I just wanted to reemphasize in terms of the process that under the strong mayor legislation, you have already tabled your budget on January 3rd, and that is the budget. And we're not amending budgets tonight. The only thing we can do is submit amendments for the January 22nd meeting, and then there's another meeting deadline further on. And the deadline to submit amendments for the January 22nd meeting was today. And then, as you mentioned, if Councillor Miller, I think it was going to make that that request, that would be for the next Budget Committee meeting, which would be on the 22nd. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yeah, just through you, Chair, just for some clarification. So the second request that I see on here, the 80,000 for the 8 to 10 events, is that something that would also, like that's not part of the service agreement? So I'm just wondering, is that something that then comes as an amendment to your budget, the mayor's budget, or is that something that, is there a different process for that because it's not part of the service agreement?
So that would have to be an additional amendment to this, that council forward request to amend the budget at the January 22nd council budget meeting for an additional $80,000 line for folk arts for the additional programming. So that would have to be an additional amendment.
And like, just to be clear, for the second round of amendments for the mayor's budget, like we could put that in whether or not it's up here or not, correct? Like we can, and you can put any amendments forward that a councilor wants to put
An
forward.
amendment can come forward at any point up till the 24th. It doesn't have to be done tonight. I would argue for the sake of holistic continuity, I think I made something up right there, but to deal with the same event and the funding associated with the same event, you probably want to deal with the amendments at the same time, but that's a council process, so it's really up to councilors how they deal with it.
Yeah, all right, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Stevens? Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff? Yes. Councillor Harris? Yes. Councillor Garcia? Yes. So sorry, everyone's name I called so far was a yes if it didn't get captured on the microphones.
My apologies. I pressed the button. It didn't switch.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Mayor Cisco?
Yes.
And that's carried.
All right, we're moving on to item 9.3, Chief Administrative Officer process for installing the historic NS&T trolley shed at Lock 1 Commons. Prior to discussing the report, I will call upon Hank Beekes and Paul Chapman from the Port Dalhousie Conservancy to provide a presentation. This is quite clearly a group bigger than the one I just described and missing one member. I will simply say that I was extraordinarily excited to see Mr. Chapman back to make a presentation this evening, so I'm a little disappointed.
Well,
it's been not, Mr. Beekes, not that it's not wonderful to have you here, but it's been a while since I saw Mr. Chapman in the room, so.
Well, unfortunately, he was supposed to be here, but apparently he has a meeting at his church where he is a key player, so he can't come.
Understandable. Even 10 years on, Mr. Chapman is an extraordinary, important person in the community, and I appreciate everything that he does for us. But I will leave the lectern to you, Hank, and you can present.
Well, I can assure you I have his support, and he is part of this process.
He and I have had discussions about it, I have no doubt.
Good. Good evening. I'd like to, my name's Hank Beekes. I'm the president of the Port Dalhousie Conservancy. Leo Versluis is a contractor who has taken the lead in moving this thing around. And Mike Slater is the past president of the BWC, who's also participated in this. This is a little bit of a different presentation in the sense that this isn't an ask, it's an offer. And so I'd like to, I'm just going to give a brief introduction before I start the slides. There are two major underutilized potential tourist attractions in St. Catharines. The first is, of course, the historic 4 canals that wind their way through the city. And the second is very much related to it, is the Niagara, St. Catharines, and Toronto Street Railway. That was one of the first electrified street railways in North America. There are some remnants of right-of-ways and some stone and concrete tunnels and bridge abutments left, but no structures that I'm aware of, save one. And that is the trolley shed, or the streetcar shelter that we're discussing tonight. The fact is, it has survived all this time, and that it was found, donated, repaired is a story that is a small miracle in itself. To say that this has been a labor of love for the Conservancy is true, but the passing of years since this building was located, repaired, restored, and the process for getting to this point feels more like I imagine the labor of childbirth to be. Since it was first discovered by accident in 2017, and in the interim period, a lot of work has been done by many different people. I counted well over 40 separate individuals that have had a hand in its preservation. I assume that you've read the heritage paper that was prepared in 2019, which was provided for your background. I would like to elaborate a bit on it via the power presentation, and I'm hopeful that you will find that this is a good news story for St. Catharines, and I hope for your enthusiastic support for placement. Okay. The NS&T, the Niagara, St. Catharines, and Toronto Street Railway. The first slide after this is an early rail car. The Port Dalhousie line was the first line to open between downtown St. Catharines and Port Dalhousie, opened in 1901. The NS&T system was an extensive electric railway. It was one of the first in North America, and it was across the region. It crossed over the old canal in the 12-Mile Creek. It went down Martindale, past the Martindale Farm, which was owned by the McSloy brothers. Some of you may remember the McSloy wing of the hospital. They also started Canada Hair Cloth, which is a downtown icon. It was a very popular destination, a show place for horses, Guernsey cows, and a lot of people who stopped there. A lot of events were held there. Now, the next one is over the trestle, which is now the Martindale Bridge, to Port. And then down Main Street, that's the corner of Lock and Main. and then down into the park, which is an early shot before the park was even developed. It was a very busy park and a ship loading area for both passengers, freight, and at peak it was 75 cars a day. There was passenger ships and freight haulers. It was a key to the economic hub of Niagara. The stop that we're referring to on the subdivision slide is the Barnsdale stop. That's the old schedule. We have one picture of it, which is the next slide. This is the only picture that we have of it being in place. The track went between the shed and the farm gate. And if the next slide, this is an early view of Martindale at its height. Next slide. It eventually became Stoke Seeds, and more recently the barn was moved and new development and ultimately became St. George's Point area. In 1950, it stopped operating and the Port Dalhousie line was shut down. Roads, cars, and buses took over. Then the big find. This is where we found it. It was on Facebook. And some detective work was required to find out where exactly it was. And this was the condition that we received it in. The floor was rotted out, but otherwise intact. And that's partly because of the fact that the roof had such a wide overhang that it didn't get a lot of weather. And the Martins, who had it on their property, took fairly good care of it. Then, the next slide, please. The next slide, we had to disassemble it due to its fragility, weight, and height. And it was too high to put on a float, so we had to take the roof off. It was a lot of interesting work. We lifted it out, cut out the floor, removed the roof. It was quite a production in 2 pieces. Ultimately, it was winched onto a float, and the roof was very heavy to move. It was very awkward. Then it was ready to go. We went down Main Street, on regional roads, all the way to Queenston. It was finally placed at the lower campus of the Willowbank School of the Restoration Arts in Queenston. There they disassembled everything, repaired it, boarded it up, and then they slowly put it back together. Of course, we had COVID in the middle of all this, so we ended up with different classes. We had about a 3-year delay. What was supposed to be I figured about a 6-month project, it turned into 6 years. So there, the roof is finally done. The body of it was repaired, a new frame put under it, but most of it was still original. Then it was painted, that's the front view, the side view, and then we had to reassemble it and get a crane in, put the roof back on. There was additional work done in the sense that we took the door out so we could make it into a more useful facility, so we could use it for serving. The leaded glass windows needed to be repaired and restored. Carvings, this one's interesting because this is the only spot where we could find a date, and it's April 24, 1918, and it says IWW. Obviously, kids in those days could take pocket knives to school. But it's really interesting because the IWW was a communist trade union which was banned by the federal government during the First World War because they were against the war. And we have ours carved right into the frame. These are the students who were involved in the repair work, and then there it was completed. Now, unfortunately, the Willowbank School sold their lower campus to a developer, so we had to get it out of there. But if you remember, it was too high to go down under the MTO rules. So we had to create a new frame, put under it. It needed wheels because it was just too high. So we needed something to transport it safely. Here you can see it from a different angle. And now is where it's sitting today is right here. And where we hope it will be placed is there. So it's, in summary, this is the only physical structure of the NS&T in existence in the city of St. Catharines. It's an iconic structure. It's kind of unique in the way that it looks. And it was probably the most unique one that was ever there, because most of these sheds and stops were pretty plain affairs. All the restoration work has been done and paid for by residents. There are some other small buildings in port that some of them cost money. This one shouldn't. The Conservancy has agreed to maintain it for at least 5 years. And this is likely the first structure that has ever been donated for use by the city and the community, and it'll likely be the last. So this is not a recurring issue. What we're hoping is that it will enhance the heritage of Port Dalhousie at a time when so much other heritage is being lost. A historical plaque will be placed adjacent to it explaining its history and importance, and that's also been paid for. Other factors, we hope it will provide some support for some of the overstressed businesses in port, especially in the next few years. The World Rowing Championships and other significant events like concerts. During COVID, we did concerts, and I know Mike's group worked very hard on having concerts in the lock, and we're still trying to get that back. And we have the 200th anniversary of Port Dalhousie in 2026. In 1826, they started selling lots for Port Dalhousie, so it's the founding of Port Dalhousie. Heritage tourism is an economic driver of many cities and even whole countries. Tourists are always keenly interested in coming to a place with interesting artifacts and stories. People don't come to our community or any community to bask in the view of condominiums. St. Catharines doesn't always do a great job of promoting itself. And with the coming of the GO train and some of these significant events, we need interesting things for people to do and see, and this will surely be one of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beekes. I have a number of 2 hands up already. I'm going to look first to Councillor Williamson, followed by Councillor Garcia. Councillor Williamson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Beekes and Mr. Versluis. So you described a tiny yet extraordinary piece of local architecture, and you say that this is really the last of its kind. This is the last example that we have of a streetcar stop of this nature.
Yes.
Okay, and in terms of the hours of volunteer in-kind labor that's gone into it, do you have any kind of a ballpark estimate, or is it just kind of gone off into a stratosphere? You haven't kept track of how many hours have gone into it?
Well, I certainly haven't kept track of the hours. I think the restoration to date has cost somewhere in the neighborhood of about 10 or 12,000.
And in terms of materials, for some of these, was the material, obviously it looks like there was a lot of new lumber, et cetera, that have been put into this to replace some of that which was rotted. Where did the money come from to fund the materials that were used to restore it?
It was all donations.
And do you have any sense of how much money that would be totaled up?
I think we were shooting for about 15,000, and I have another 10,000 of pledges that are outstanding because of placement.
Okay, and because this is such a gem and a rare piece, and you have fully restored it, you want to locate it in this position because it's a high-profile location that people will be able to appreciate, and when they can go to the lock and they can see the tow horse, and it's in a central location. Is that the idea behind why you wanted to have it located above the lock or partly in the lock?
Yeah, the whole conversation about it started when we were doing concerts, and we thought it would be really nice to have something there for for selling coffee or whatever, you know, people getting a bottle of water or something like that. And we could sell tickets and things like that. We do have an operational plan. The meeting in that sense is more for information and hopefully to get your support for placement. We do have an operational plan that we have out there, and it's obviously a work in progress because you can't sell the thing until it's in place. It's impossible for us to be able to go to the business community and say, hey, would you guys like to use this facility to promote Port Dalhousie and St. Catharines if it's not there. So it's really a chicken and egg thing.
Now, Councillor Garcia has spent a lot of time trying to make this happen, and we seem to be at the final stages. And it's up to the mayor to thank presenters, so I'll not do that. But what is it that we can do to facilitate this happening tonight?
Well, I think it's important for us to get placement, and we are working with the staff on it. We haven't completed that process. I'm hoping that we can get it done in fairly short order.
Thank you.
I'm not sure there's much council can do at this point until we know where our final positions are.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I have a few questions, but first of all, I wanted to thank Mr. Bekas, the Port Dalhousie Conservancy, the BWC, Mr. Versluis, and all the volunteers who have worked on this. As he said, it's not every day that we get somebody coming to us with something unique like this, and they're doing all the work and funding everything. So really appreciate it. So you've already said that this has taken about 6 years, but can you share with us a little bit about the status of the lease at this time? What's happening with it? Or?
Well, it hasn't been completed yet. I mean, part of it is that this is a work in progress, and it's hard for us to nail down exactly. We have insurance issues. We have who's going to own it issues. We're prepared to own it, but that also means we have to pay insurance and things like that, right? And so, we're hoping to create some pamphlets. We have somebody working on for example, a Port Dalhousie walking tour. I'm a big believer that not everything in this world is online. We sometimes tend to think that, but that's really not the case. And I think that we need some materials to be able to hand to people, and maybe discount coupons for businesses and things like that. But until it's placed, a lot of the details of that can't be worked out. And we may be back to you 6 months from now and say, hey, now we know what the issues are, and we can deal with them then, right?
Thank you for that. I certainly hope it won't be 6 months. And Mr. Mayor, Councilor Williamson and I have a motion later, but just a couple of more questions. So tell us about, I know Councilor Williamson already asked this, but in terms of specifically, why do you think this is the right location for it and exactly where the location would be and so on?
Well, I think it needs to be there partly because of the fact that it's a well-lighted public space, and it's highly visible, and only in highly visible locations can you protect it from damage. Secondly, I think it is in a place, because it's such a public place, that it'll have community uses. It'll be part of the stage venue, and it can be used to promote St. Catharines and the community. As you're aware, heritage buildings that have no use don't last very long. So it's important to us as well that it has a use and that the community gets in on using it. And finally, it's got great historical significance to both St. Catharines and the NS&T, but also particularly to Port Dalhousie. So I think we can tell a really nice story to people who come to visit Port Dalhousie.
Thank you for that. And last question, would you share with us your thinking on installation, how it would be installed if you had your choice, or?
Well, I'll leave the how up to Leo, who has sort of been leading that off. He helped us in terms of moving it to Queenston, and he didn't help us moving it back, but he's planning to help us putting it in its proper location, where the Heritage Committee has said it could go.
Okay.
We do have a heritage permit for it already.
Okay. And sorry, I said one last question, so another one. You also, I believe, would like to have, I know we have an approved budget for that the BWC and Mr. Slater have been fighting for a long time to get proper power to the lock to hold concerts and events. And you would also like one electrical outlet to be added to the trolley shed, is that correct?
Yes, we're hoping that we can get electrical power there, basically to run a light or a coffee pot or something like that. You know, it's not a big deal, but it's important for us to be able to make it functional. And we've said it to the city that, you know, if you want to, we'll put it in. We just need access to power.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions, Mr. Mayor. And as I said, when questions are finished, Councilor Williamson and I have a motion to try to move this along.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Ratzlaff.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, through you. This is such a fantastic story. I'm super excited about what you've got going on here. I'm disappointed I wasn't aware of it until recently. But it reminded me, looking at these pictures, reminded me of a small controversy that the previous individual who sat in this chair created around taking the bus to the beach. And people say, oh, no one take the bus to the beach. These pictures look like everyone at one point took the bus to the beach. And so I was just like, I was thinking about that and the story you're trying to tell with this project, and how I think it comes at such a great time or important time in our city when we're talking about different ways of we're talking about transportation and different forms of transportation. We have the active transportation master plan coming up. We've amalgamated transit. We talk about parking a lot in Port Dalhousie. And yeah, I guess I'm wondering, I'm excited for how the story can inform, our history can inform the present. And I guess I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to make that more explicit by somehow working with our current transit, Niagara Regional Transit, and find maybe, I don't know exactly how this, I don't know exactly, you know, how this idea would play out, but I wonder if you've gone to Niagara Regional Transit and asked them if they'd help, you know, maybe telling the story. I don't know how exactly they'd help tell that story, but definitely I think that there is huge potential for things like this to help push the conversation along on more efficient, more sustainable ways of navigating the city that that we're talking about around this horseshoe all the time. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the trolley shed could do that necessarily, but I mean that discussion to me it has a lot to do with what happens with the regional road going through Port Dalhousie, and potentially losing another 40 parking spaces and not having you know, bus pullouts and things like that. That's a discussion for around here for sure. I think we could talk to regional transit. I mean, one of the things that's been floated in the community is, you know, why don't we get some trolley buses going from the GO station right down to Port Dalhousie, right?
Yeah, I would love to see a trolley day, a Port Dalhousie trolley day, where everyone's encouraged to take the bus to the beach. That'd be fantastic.
Well, they have a beach bus.
We won't need those parking spaces after all. Thanks.
Impressed by your commitment to the message, Councilor Ratzlaff. Councilor Stevens.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the presenters. Actually, I go to Florida, and in Cocoa Beach, the Cocoa Beach Transit, our buses that look like trolleys that run up and down the A1A there. So it's kind of a neat thing. Just one quick question. I know the picture's superimposed and everything, but the dimensions, and maybe it'd have to be through staff, is this filling up that whole area? Is there still the required walking space that we need for accessibility in behind this to continue on that sidewalk?
Yes, there is. This picture isn't exactly what was proposed to staff.
Yeah.
I think the discussion between us has to do with location, partly because what we want to do is leave 8 feet behind it, which is more than sufficient for our accessibility, and we don't want to put it too far onto the apron, simply because of the fact that you lose the views through the lock, as well as the potential occupancy of the apron.
That's great. I assumed that, but you know, when you get in trouble when you assume things, so with that picture, but I just wanted to make sure that's great. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I will take this opportunity to thank the presenters for the presentation, and I will also take this moment just to thank Mr. Beekes because he has been relentless in this particular pursuit, but it's an excellent kind of relentless, because I think when we come to a decision, and I'm confident listening to the conversation around council that I think I know which direction we're going in. I appreciate the fact that you've done so much work to try and maintain this piece of heritage and to provide it back to the city as a focal point in the Port Dalhousie area. So on behalf of council, thank you for the work you've done up to this point, and thank you for the presentation this evening.
Thank you.
All right, can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation? Councillor Garcia, Councillor Williamson, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And then we do have a motion that will come up on the screen. This is moved by Councillor Garcia and seconded by Councillor Williamson. I'm taking a guess with the Councillor Williamson part, but made sense to me. And so it's not actually this one. This was simply to receive for information. So Councillor Garcia has a further amendment, which is the more fulsome portion of the motion. So if we could bring that one up. There we go. So I'm going to ask Councillor Garcia, do you want to speak to the amendment now? All right, so if you can buzz in there, I will put you on the board. And then if there are any other speakers, feel free to jump into queue. Councillor Garcia.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Williamson may have some comments as well. But based on what we just heard from Mr. Beekes and all the discussions we have had, I wanted to put together a motion with Councillor Williamson to make it clear that council wants to advance this and get it going. As he said, it's been 6 years. So the motion that we added is that staff work with the Port Dalhousie Conservancy to ensure the required license agreement is finalized as soon as possible and in plenty of time to have it installed in advance of summer weather, and that the following considerations form part of the license agreement. And I have reviewed this with the Deputy CAO, who has been working on these issues with the Conservancy, and of course the BWC has helped a lot too. They have had issues with leases as well, as we all know. So that the following considerations form part. One, an on-site meeting with Port Dalhousie Conservancy to investigate the potential of installing the trolley shed to straddle the lock wall in a way that, as Mr. Beekes said, that mitigates the adverse impacts to the view, because if you put it too far towards Lakeport Road, it could block the view that you get down the lock, which is outstanding. And standing capacity, because we don't want it to take away from the capacity that the lock will have for concerts when Mr. Slater and his successor will be arranging, hopefully, and finalizing that as well, and minimizing risk to the adjacent sidewalk and insurance compliance with accessibility requirements. So this is the issue that Councillor Stevens just brought up. And I know from my discussions with the Deputy CAO that Mr. Bicos has already identified that there would be more than enough room to walk by on the sidewalk. The only potential concern is that if the shed is jutting out, even if there is 8 feet past it, that maybe kids on a bicycle or whatever could run into it. I believe that we could solve that perhaps with some warning sign or something to make sure that people are aware that this is there. But anyway, that's point number one. Point number two is about the provision of that electrical outlet that we talked about. And within the project scope for supplying power to the lock, which the power to the lock has a very significant budget, much higher in my opinion than what was needed, but they didn't know, staff didn't know what would be needed at the time. And hopefully accommodated through that approved budget if possible. Mr. Bicos, who has, the Conservancy has paid for so much of this, he has even offered to hire a contractor and add that outlet if necessary, but hopefully we can accommodate that. And then last but not least, that staff review the requirements of the hawkers and peddlers bylaw, and if necessary for this purpose, provide options to council that would assist in supporting the group with associated fees. And this relates to the fact that the Deputy CAO identified that Mr. Bicos would like, as he said, to distribute brochures and hopefully perhaps sell some trinkets or buttons or something. Not a big retail operation, but from what we hear, if anything is sold, then you need a hawkers and peddlers license. So this is one issue that we need to help him with, as well as the insurance that will be required under the license agreement. So that is the motion, and again, I'm hoping that we will get unanimous support, and I don't know if Councilor Williamson wants to add something to that.
I don't have him on the speakers list yet. Oh, but there he is. So Councilor Williamson?
I don't think there's anything that can really be added. I will now extend my appreciation to Mr. Bicos, to Hank Slater, to Leo Versluz, Colin Johnson, Mr. Paul Chapman, Councilor Garcia, and our Deputy CAO, Ohoski, and her staff. And they've done a lot of work. And as the mayor physically described it, the relentless efforts it took to hammer out all the details to ensure that this small yet spectacular piece of our heritage gets to be placed in a fitting location where it can, in fact, be a landmark and a focal point. So appreciate council's support in this somewhat multi-part amendment, but hopefully it leads to us making this happen in the very near future.
All right, thank you, Councilor Williamson. I've got Councilor Townsend, followed by Councilor Dodge, and then Councilor Phillips. Councilor Townsend?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, just I guess to the mover and to the seconder, would it be appropriate to perhaps ask for additional public input, or do you both feel comfortable with the recommendation that's been brought forward by the Conservancy, specific to location?
If we could ask for Councilor Garcia's mic to be opened.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councilor Townsend. Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I believe we are both perfectly comfortable with what has been done. This has been going on for a long time. As Mr. Bicos said, people are familiar. Mr. Chapman, who unfortunately couldn't be here, he's such an advocate for the NS&T and his history. And again, he's so excited about the fact that this is the last remaining artifact from the NS&T, which is such a historic railway and such an important part of our history. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I felt it was appropriate to ask the question because I know people in Port Dalhousie are very passionate about things. So I wanted to get that out there. My next question through you, Chair, is to staff. Is there an estimate as to what the cost of an additional outlet would cost to install for this building?
Deputy CAO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Not at this time. We have had an on-site consultation with the folks that presented this evening. with the person who's doing the entire project at the Lock 1 facility. So all of those requests from the group have been forwarded onto the design consulting, and we're just waiting for confirmation if we can fit it in within the approved project budget from council and the capital of $100,000, which we're hopeful we'll be able to. So we didn't cost out the electrical on its own. What we're doing is costing out the whole project to make sure we can accommodate it within the project budget.
So through you, Chair, will this come back to council for a decision on for approving this financially? Because I just heard $100,000.
So I believe that's actually already been approved.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor, through you. It was approved through the 2023 capital budget. So we're just implementing that project now. The money has already been approved. Insofar as the decision point from council, we're in the final, we call the fine print stages of the license agreement. And we anticipate with just some few outstanding issues, we will have a license agreement come forward for council's consideration shortly. It is a property matter, which is typically discussed in camera.
Thank you for that. Through you, Chair, I think this is an amazing project. I think it's great. I love to see all the work that's gone into it. My question through you, Chair, is to staff on this project is who would be responsible for the maintenance, and is there a liability to the city on this? And the reason I bring this up, I think it's a great location. It's very central. There's a lot of cars driving by, but this previous council made a decision to install a washroom in an area that had lots of traffic, and it has not gone according to as we expected. So to staff, again, is there a liability here? And who is responsible for the maintenance on this building? It's just, I guess I'm concerned about installing hydroelectricity into this space. So maybe if staff can comment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. While the specific details of the license agreement will be part of the report that council will consider in camera, I can say that this model that we've been working on with Port Dalhousie Conservancy and their partners initially had a lot of responsibilities on the city, but during the negotiation process, it was also the same timeline we were putting together the asset management plan for our non-core assets, and we're reluctant to take on the additional obligations for another facility that we hadn't anticipated in that plan. So Port Dalhousie Conservancy agreed to step up and agreed to be the lead on a license agreement whereby they would retain ownership and a lot of the obligations for the operation and maintenance of the structure and as well as the activities within it. We are in the fine print of putting together the license agreement, but that's the model we're working on.
Thank you for that. My final question is in regards to the third portion of the ask. It's in regarding to the hawkers and peddlers bylaw and the associated fees. What are the associated fees with the hawkers and peddlers, license? And is the councillor asking us to cover the fees of the license? Yeah.
Yes, my understanding is that if you're selling anything that you need a hawkers and peddlers license, although I'm sure there are a lot of people who go door to door that knocking on your door selling you stuff that don't have a license, but because it is a visible place, staff will likely insist that they need a license if they're going to sell anything. And there is a cost for that, and hopefully we can find the money for that somewhere.
So Deputy CAO.
With respect to your question, Councillor Townsend, about the specific costs, so for those purposes that do require a hawker's peddler's license, the fee for residents is $225 and change annually, and for non-residents, it's $692 and change.
Thank you. So the councillor, through you, Chair, the councillor is asking that we would waive those fees, correct?
I will jump in here.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get clarity and understanding.
No, that's fair. That's not what the motion is asking for, though. That's asking that staff review the requirements and if necessary, provide options to council. So no decision will be made through the moving and passing of this motion today. It would simply be to provide options to council that we could then clarify at a later date.
Thank you. And I guess through you, Chair, where I was going with this is like there's a snack bar down in Port Dalhousie who I guess they would also have to pay for this fee. It might open up a can of worms that other hawkers and peddlers within the city selling things might then ask, well, why can't you? Why is it that this is getting special treatment in comparison with others? So I think it's a fair ask, and as long as it's coming back for a future council decision, I'm happy to support this.
It is, yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so I've got Councillor Dodge, followed by Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to, I guess, the movers. First of all, I'd like to say that I've heard about this often, and I'm pretty excited about this. I think it's going to be a great add to the city. But the one thing, Councillor Townsend asked a lot of questions, but the one thing that I was wondering if we could maybe expand on, and I think that it's easier when you're doing the work, and I know that some of this, when I was down there, when we did the lock horse, they were talking about the fact that they had no electrical. And I see in the motion that they added one electrical outlet. So I'm wondering if while they're doing that, could they not, even if they don't put it in now, but at least rough it in so that it could be later added if it's necessary without going through a lot of extra work? Like I'm thinking one electrical outlet, like are they not going to have any lights or anything, light source in the building, or, you know, things like that. So I'm wondering if maybe that, you know, when we're looking at putting in the electrical, we should maybe expand what we put in there when we're doing the ask for that.
Mr. Martuccio.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. As the Deputy CEO indicated, we are currently in the design phase for the electrical for the lock. We are including two provisions. One provision is for power to the trolley shed. Another provision is for a route for power to the tow horse. They are provisional items because they were not included in the scope of work when the budget was put together for the electrical work. However, if the tenders can accommodate it, staff will look at installing those feeds.
Okay, so sorry, I'm not an electrician. So just for clarification purposes, does that mean that if they wanted to have a light put in there, say, or even some exterior lighting at some point in time, would that be something that would be available without having a whole lot of, going through a lot of stuff to get that in place?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would mean that there would be a power source adjacent to the trolley shed, which would allow for power to be fed into the trolley shed if required.
So can we ask for that now? Could that be added to this as an amendment then?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe that's already in the motion.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize. Okay, all right, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dodge. Councillor Phillips.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a great situation that we have in Port Dalhousie to add one more component of heritage, and I'd like to thank Mr. Beekus and his group. I think it's great that they've hired, or not hired, that they have Versluis Brothers, who are renowned in the city as one of the best contractors around to do it. So I know as a councillor and as staff, what has been done is top quality. So there's nothing we have to worry about in that respect. As far as lighting is concerned, let's get it right. If it's going to cost an extra few dollars, let's get it right so that it looks nice, so that it looks proper. If you're going to be a bear, you might as well be a grizzly. So let's make sure that what we have down there when you walk down there is going to look appropriate. To our Deputy CAO, as far as staffing is concerned, set on the board, we hope to have it ready for this summer. Can staff have it ready for this summer?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor, we're working diligently to get the license agreement in front of council as soon as possible. Like I said, there are maybe a handful of small print outstanding issues. What the ward councilors are directing in terms of the on-site meeting to resolve some of these issues. When we talk about the location, our discussions right now are a matter of feet, not meters. So we are very close. So as soon as we finalize and make sure that Port Dalhousie Conservancy and their partners are comfortable with what we agreed to, we will get it in front of council as soon as possible so that the work can commence shortly after. I will say we've been kind of looking at this from two lenses. One, as a piece of history that would be on display in Port Dalhousie, and the other is what goes on inside that shed. As Mr. Beekes mentioned, that operating plan is in a bit of a state of flux because they are trying to generate interest by getting the trolley shed placed on the site. So that's our priority right now, to assist them in generating that interest.
Okay. And as far as the hawker peddler license is concerned, because they are nonprofit, is there any reduction because they're nonprofit compared to a company that's profitable?
Through you, Mr. To take a look at what latitude exists in the hawkers and peddlers bylaw, and then what activities they're planning in the short term. It might be in the short term. It may not be required based on their status. If they're supporting businesses in the future, we'll have to take a look at that. But that's part of the work we'll undertake as part of this direction.
And just lastly, I think this is one that needs to go to the front of the line as far as getting it done. As Mr. Christie will tell you, I'm quite a proponent in getting splash pads open in July rather than September, and because that's when they get used. In a situation like this, it's important that we get this done in June so that the residents and visitors can enjoy it throughout the summer. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I can assure you all hands on deck, and I want to just thank all departments who've been involved because it is a multi-department project, have been available for site meetings, have been available to work through issues. So just wanted to commend all departments, which is almost all of them, who've been involved in this issue. So thanks for that, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harris.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess I would direct this question maybe to maybe the head of engineering. What exactly, there's $100,000 budgeted, what exactly does that include?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that the $100,000 is to engage a consulting engineer to come up with the design. We also need to feed a power source to the lock from a panel that is a little bit further down, I'll call it down the street, down Main Street, as well as put in a panel, some electrical outlets, some lighting to the lock for safety and security, power for performances, and then, as I mentioned, these two provisional items for lighting of the horse, as well as power to the trolley shed.
Okay, and so would you think that in that $100,000 we could supply power to a, well, I don't know, is that shed 10 by 10?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm hopeful. I'm not going to give you any promises.
And I guess the next question is, whoever does the electrical, it'd probably be up to whatever the existing codes are for the number of outlets and lights and all that kind of stuff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's exactly why we've engaged a consultant to ensure that everything that is installed at the lock is the code.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions? Seeing none, I'll look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Garcia?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
And Mayor Cisco?
Yes.
And that's carried.
Item 9.4, Community and Recreation and Culture Services, Business Planning and Strategic Services Neighborhood Microgrants Pilot Project. This was requested by Councillor McPherson. Councillor McPherson is moving this, but she is actually moving an alternate motion. Again, this was a for information staff recommendation. So the council is being asked to approve the neighborhood microgrant pilot project pending funding approval. The funding approval would be a part of an amendment which has already been submitted for the January 22nd budget meeting, correct? Okay, so we have a mover of Councilor McPherson. Do we have a seconder? Councilor Harris. All right, Councilor McPherson, do you wish to speak to the motion? Would you like to press your button? Okay. Councilor McPherson.
I will be brief. I just want to thank staff. I want to thank Kaylee, Eric, and of course, Director Christie, the man who knows all, about helping with this report and being enthusiastic when I brought the idea to them and not getting angry when I asked for a report. So the microgrants simply are a small bit of seed funding for individuals and community organizations who are just getting off the ground to try an event or an event, a display in the city. And as somebody who received, has received small grants in their lifetime, a little bit goes a long way when you're starting out. And hopefully we'll see lots of people apply and lots of great things come out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question through you to staff. Would a community group that is volunteer but is incorporated qualify for microgrants?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would need to, I'm not sure of the eligibility. I'd need to get back to you on that. I believe the policy that we drafted would disqualify such groups, but I'd need to confirm with you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. So this is just a request to ask for a report on, this is asking for new funding in our budget for clarification?
Sorry, Councillor, can you repeat the question? My pen just exploded in my hand. I couldn't figure out what was going on.
So this is a request. It would have to be added to the budget for new funding. This is something we don't have any funding for right now.
This would be a pilot project. So I believe when the request comes forward, it will identify a funding source. It could
So at a time when we're trying to keep the budget tight, and this is a new funding thing, so it's going to be for new spending.
Councillor, that's true, but I would point out that about an hour ago, you approved potentially $150,000 being forwarded. It's exactly the same process. I'm actually not trying to be difficult or argumentative. No. We're following the exact same process here as we followed with the folk arts. Yeah. So I think they are actually both.
Yes and no, I think. They bring money back to the city and stuff. I don't know. Well, I guess this could, so, yeah. All right, never mind, thank you.
Any other speakers to the motion? All right, seeing none, I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
And Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
And that's carried.
That was for you, Councillor Stevens. 9.6, Community Recreation and Culture Services, Programs and Cultural Services, Comparison of Fireworks Displays and Drones Shows. This was requested to be moved from discussion by Councillor Townsend. So, Councillor Townsend, you're moving. Can I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Stevens. All right. Councillor Townsend?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I pulled this because I'm a little concerned with the comments or the lack of from the Environmental Stewardship Advisory Committee. The appendix that was attached said that basically the points below have not been verified, but these are maybe some of the things that, it's basically a pros and cons list. I'm just asking to refer this back to the Environmental Stewardship Advisory Committee to provide some direction to council on whether council should be doing a firework ban similar to what other municipalities are doing, and whether we should move into the direction of drone shows. Because of the comments that are attached in here, it basically says, note, the points below have not been verified. But then it says, it shows the discussion with the environment. So it's basically a pros and cons list that was submitted. I would just like to submit back to the committee to provide some direction here.
Okay, so a motion to refer back to staff.
To the committee.
Sorry, to the committee.
Yes.
Okay.
To provide direction.
Okay. Motion to refer is non-debatable. So all those in favor of the motion to refer? Opposed? That's carried. All right, and then I will apologize. I skipped over 9.5, which is Planning and Building Services Resource Implications of Transitioning to Proactive City Enforcement Practices. This was requested to be moved to discussion by Councillor Phillips. So Councillor Phillips, are you moving the motion? And do I have a seconder?
Yes, I'll move the motion.
I have a seconder? Councillor Garcia. All right, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I brought this forward, and I've had concerns raised by residents as well, there's times when our bylaw enforcement officers go out and to inspect tall grass complaints, property standards complaints. They write up a report, they do what they need to do, but in driving away, there might be a similar residence 2, 3, 4 houses away that are not in compliance either. But because there wasn't a complaint raised, the bylaw enforcement officer doesn't do anything about it. And to me, if you're on site and it's obvious that there's a bylaw infraction, instead of having to drive back to the city, write a report, or whatever you need to, whatever they do, on the one that was a complaint, if they saw another one, why wouldn't they just be able to write the report on that one also? I know this is strictly complaint driven the way it is, but to me, it would save time, it would save money, because sooner or later, that second house is going to have a complaint placed also. I think the new complaint process that we have online that our CAO has developed, I guess it was David that developed it, it is working, but we still have situations where, and we're not talking about a lot of houses. I would say, 99.9% of the houses in St. Catharines don't have bylaw infractions. So, but it's a situation where I think we could probably work smarter by not having to come back to or not having to go back to that second place after the complaint. So I thought it was a really, really well-written report. I give you credit for the report. I learned some things about property standards and bylaw enforcement that I didn't know, but I do think that we could probably work smarter. And I'm just suggesting to our staff that they review that policy or that the way that things are done, and maybe we could save some money that way. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Phillips. Are there any other, Councillor Stevens?
Yes, to go along with what Councillor Phillips said, because we've had these discussions before about this, and I was under the understanding from bylaw that staff did take direction to staff that if they're going down a street because somebody was parked illegal, blocking a driveway, that when they proceeded down the street after issuing the ticket or whatever it's called, if they saw another one on that same street, they would stop and look after that as well, because we all know it's neighbors against neighbors, and one guy says, I got a ticket, the guy 2 doors down is doing the same thing, why didn't he get one that day? And I believe we were told that we were doing that, so I'm hoping that we do it like that still.
Who am I looking to? Ms. Douglas, Ms. Kate, Mr. Chidoba? I got a whole bunch of people in the bullpen.
Yeah.
Ms. Douglas.
Yeah, thank you. I'll start.
You drew the short straw.
Yeah, so parking enforcement, yes, it is on a complaint basis, but if the parking enforcement officer does notice an infraction when they are out, they would provide the violation when they are there.
Yes, there is a difference between parking and property standards.
No, thanks. No, yeah, that's right. I mean, we're getting a lot of.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I will, Councillor Ratzlaff.
Sorry, this question is just, it came up in the report. You talked a little bit about vacant properties. And since that bylaw's been put into place, we've seen a bunch, and a bunch have been successfully enforced, it looked like. And I'm just wondering, do you anticipate that plateauing, or do we anticipate it continuing on its upward trajectory, particularly because it is complaint-based, and it doesn't look like there's any proactive component to it, so.
Mr. Chidoba?
Through his worship to the councillor, thank you for that question. So what we are seeing is, for one, the program is being effective in the way that we are getting buildings that are being removed from the registry. So since the registry has taken effect, we've had over 14 buildings that have since either been demolished, occupied, or renovated and repurposed, so to speak. With that, the report does indicate, I believe it's 88 that are currently on the registry. We're now up to 97 that are on the registry. The purpose of the vacant building registry, though, is also to motivate property owners to address not only the issues on the property as they come up, but also to start movement and taking some type of action to deal with that. In terms of calls for service, we are still steady. We're upwards of still about 150 investigations per year with respect to the vacant buildings, at least last year. The number might be a little bit higher as indicated in the report.
That's really helpful. I guess just a follow-up question then, only because I think like affordability and housing is top of mind for a lot of residents, and it is maddening when there are vacant properties that aren't being utilized well. Through your research for this report, do you think a proactive approach would help or hinder the work that's happening? Like how would that be a cost-effective way of bringing us closer to the goal of the registry?
Through his worship to the councillor, neighborhoods are pretty good at policing themselves and identifying problems in their area and ultimately bringing that to the attention of the bylaw enforcement division. Going around and looking around for vacant properties, some might not look as derelict, so to speak, that would not catch the eye of an officer passing by, so to speak. Also, if the property is being maintained fairly well, once again, it will not likely gain attention. With the vacant building registry, there's either utilities have been disconnected or it's unoccupied. It does not necessarily mean that the building is boarded up. It could still be free from trespass by being secure, and in some cases would not require that.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Just want to make sure we're doing all we can to encourage units to come online. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Councillor Ratzlaff. Seeing no other questions, I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Moving this, we had Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner. And Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
And that's carried.
All right, moving on to 9.7, Municipal Works and Community Recreation and Culture Services, Business Planning and Strategic Services, Cul-de-Sac Naturalization. This was requested by Councillor Townsend. Can I get a councillor to move the recommendation in the report? Councillor Townsend, do I have a seconder? Councillor Phillips? Okay. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I pulled this. It was interesting to see that 72% of residents were in support of naturalization of cul-de-sacs. I was also concerned in the report that Rennie Park is still under the Pollinator Gardens naturalized areas, and that's based on May 29th council meeting where Councillor Williamson, Councillor Garcia, and myself had commented on removing that from the naturalization. Staff had said that that would be removed because of it's a piece that I believe councillors, we had agreed on that should be maintained by the city, especially with the World Rowing Championships that are coming into Port Dalhousie. So I was just going to direct staff to have that removed as a pollinator naturalized area. And then at that same meeting on May 29th, we had requested that the Grantham Rail Trail be added into the pollinator garden naturalized area list. So if I could just put that on the as a change to direct staff to remove the Rennie Park naturalized area.
So I'm just going to jump in because I don't have a firm recollection. I'd like looking to the clerk. Has that previously been a motion of council?
May 29th.
Through the mayor to council. On May 29th, council approved that staff report back to council on solutions for maintaining the upper portion of Rennie Park, specific to the island area, and that staff include the Grantham Rail Trail for consideration to be added to the current list of pollinator gardens naturalized areas to be included in that report.
So then I'm going to look to staff. It sounds to me like what we approved was a report. Mr. Smith?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we will have that report before this season is in place, and we will be able to deal with that.
Okay, so it'll be coming before, is to ensure that if work needs to be done to make those changes, it can be done for this season.
To you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay. So it sounds to me like that what we approved was a report. It is coming back.
Well, it just, through you, Chair, it just concerns me if we're approving this as it is when the changes haven't been made in the report. I would feel more comfortable myself seeing that Rennie Park be removed as requested, or should we just defer this until that comes back to council?
Well, this one is specific to the cul-de-sacs. And so Rennie Park and the Grantham Rail Trail wouldn't fall into that category. I mean, it's council's prerogative whether someone wishes to make a motion to defer until that report comes back and they can be considered at the same time. Ultimately, I'm going to look to Mr. Smith, but I don't think the approval of this now or at that time would change much for the upcoming season unless council were going to act contrary to this, in which case.
To you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
So assuming council was going to vote in favor of this report and this recommendation the way it stands, we can do that now or we can do it later.
So with that, thank you, Chair, through you. So what I would like to do then on this is I would like to refer this back to the Environmental Stewardship Committee because I think that they should comment on this. They haven't. I don't know why they haven't. Based on what I've seen. So I think it's most appropriate to refer it to that committee to comment on, 72% of people not supporting that's quite a high number.
I don't disagree that it may be the most appropriate course of action. Unfortunately, you've spoken to the motion, but if someone else wanted to press the button and be the next speaker. Councillor Harris.
I would like to refer this.
To
the Environmental Sustainability Committee.
Stewardship,
sustainability, all the same thing.
I did have my hand up, sir.
Oh, I apologize, Councillor Williamson. Well, we're going to pause momentarily with Councillor Harris's motion because I did miss the order and you probably had your hand up before I asked somebody to put their hand up. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. Like you, my recollection isn't probably 100% accurate, but in terms of Rennie Island, what I recollect is that we agreed that basically it wasn't naturalized anymore because it had been overgrown with invasive species, et cetera, and that temporarily for the World Rowing Championships, it could be somewhat cleared or managed. And then it was kind of subject to a report as to what the future of it would be as a naturalized area or not, and maybe be difficult to reinstitute it as a naturalized area afterwards, or maybe not. But that's what I think anyway. Probably the deferral is in line. The other comment I had is that the Environmental Sustainability Stewardship Committee meets tomorrow, so it would be good to turn it around quickly because I think the meetings are every month. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Williamson. I will say the clerk did go back and check the minutes as to what she saw was approved. For clarity, was this May 29th of 2022?
Yeah, so as I was,
That explains why I don't remember it. I wasn't here.
no, it was 2023, but wait, what
No.
year is it?
It's 2024 now.
Okay, no, it was 2023. Ignore
Okay.
my comment, yeah.
Okay.
It's 2023.
Well, because the clerk said, I think it happened last term and it didn't stay on the ORL. So I thought, okay, well then I wasn't here. But I thought I did, but it rung a bell until she told me I was wrong. There is a motion to defer. It's non-debatable. All those in favor of the motion to refer, sorry. Opposed? That is carried. All right, so we move on to 9.8. Is this the last one on the discussion agenda tonight? Was it a New Year's resolution that we were going to talk more this year, or? 9.8, Municipal Works Operations Forestry Service Levels. This was also moved from discussion by Councillor Townsend, so we have a recommendation to receive. Councillor Townsend, you're moving the recommendation? You're moving the recommendation?
Thank you, Chair. Yes.
Okay, do I have a seconder for this one? Councillor Phillips? All right, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, my question is, when I looked through the report, why does it take 1 to 2 years to get a tree pruning? Like, I'm just curious at the timeline, what it entails, just so maybe council gets an understanding. Because there have been a number of residents in St. George's Ward who have reached out, and they get frustrated because of the timeline that it takes. But maybe just to get some understanding as to maybe why it does take so long.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll refer this to Dan Cooper, who is on Zoom.
Okay, Mr. Cooper?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Certain work orders can take a longer period of time depending on what they're rated and the current backlog that we have. So for instance, if we have 100 work orders that are rated at 1 and 0, they would have to be addressed due to potential hazards that may exist. So some work orders do get put in the wings because there are more pressing trees that need to be completed at that time.
Thank you for that. And another follow-up question through you, Chair, is obviously the focus here is about tree removal and tree maintenance as a part of the forestry servicing levels. My question is within the list, I don't see anything that really pertains to tree planting. And is it because this department wouldn't actually focus on any type of tree planting?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. The tree planting is handled through the CRCS department.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had asked for this report some time ago, and obviously some things have changed since I've asked for the report. I'm wondering if I could ask some questions that aren't addressed in this report right now. So, you said that there's quite the backlog, and that's kind of what I had reached out to Dan Cooper and Gerald Smith in the beginning, was because I was asking them, what would it take for us to clear up this backlog? And one of the things that's come to light recently is that, we only have half of our forestry department filled with workers. So, can you address that? Why is it that that's happening right now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're preparing a memo for council's review for that at the budget discussion, but I will address that to a certain degree at this point. So when we initially contacted the union to have discussions around the potential of contracting out forestry, we put hirings on hold to try to ensure that we were not going to be hiring somebody and then laying them off right away within a couple of months. Now, unfortunately, this process has taken much longer than we originally anticipated. for the amount of people that are involved, including the national reps of the QP union. And there's been some change over there, which has also impacted our ability to meet. And so that hiring freeze was kept in place until this question has been dealt with. However, I will add that the backlog of our tree backlog has really, for the most part, maintained steady because of our ability to use the contractors that we have in place now that already do some of this work.
Okay, thank you for that. So when you read this report, it says that we have quite a large backlog. And when we had spoken before about it, I had asked about how long it would take to catch up and what the cost would be, and I didn't see any of that in here. And actually, I have quite a few other questions. Maybe perhaps I should, fill this out. And I'm wondering if I could get a report back or something on some of the questions, and how long would it take before we would get those answers back? Because I waited quite a long time for this report to actually come to council.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm more than happy to receive your questions, and I would have them worked on to get an answer back as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, I think I'll wait and speak with the director after, because there's quite a few questions I have.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dodge. Councillor Kushner.
Thank you. The question I have is, what happens when a crew has a work order and they go to the address, and there's been a recent storm or event, and the next door neighbor has branches which are down? Do they cut those branches? They're not on their work order, but do they go over? They have the equipment there? I know for Bell Telephone, when that happened, that type of thing happened, we would phone in and ask whether that should be corrected. Do we use that flexibility?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll say in general, yes, we do. But again, I'll turn that over to Dan to provide more specifics.
Mr. Cooper.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. If staff do arrive on site after a certain amount of storm damage and they do see something on an adjacent property that is potentially hazardous, they would always take care of that as well. Staff would never leave anything that could potentially be harmful to anybody.
Thank you.
Not seeing any other speakers, I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Sorry, can I just clarify? I know I'm out of order here, but Councillor Dodge, is there going to be a follow-up report to this, or what is the status then?
I think that's part of her conversation with Mr. Smith, Councillor.
Okay, all right, thank you, yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
And Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
And that's carried.
All right. There are no motions, but item 11, motions of City Council as the member for Tourism St. Catharines. And we have approval of Tourism St. Catharines bylaw number 1. Moving this is Councillor McPherson. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Townsend. Does anybody wish to speak to the motion, which is up there, approving Tourism St. Catharines bylaw number 1, a necessity for this organization? Seeing none, I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
And Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
And that's carried.
All right. Are there any notices of motion? All right, seeing none, then we are on to report requests. I have Councillor Lindell has a report request. Councillor Kushner, can I just ask you to turn off your mic? Thank you kindly. So Councillor Lindell has a report request for food and beverage revenue opportunities for Garden City Golf Course. Councillor Miller has a report request for a comprehensive report on the Forestry Division operations to include the status of current in-house operations and an analysis of bringing all operations in-house, including tree planting and maintenance, stumping and reinstatement. I will first look to either of those two councillors. Do either of you wish to speak to either of these, or are they rather self-explanatory? Self-explanatory. Can I have a mover and a second? I'm going to say Councillor Lindell and Councillor Miller as the mover and the seconder for these two. And then Councillor Dodge, do you have a question?
I do, Mr. Mayor. On the second one for Councillor Miller, I'm just wondering how long are we going to, before we see this report back? Because I think that some of the questions that I have could be answered in this report.
Okay, I think.
Yeah, sorry, I threw you the mayor, even though you didn't call on me. It had been suggested that Q3, and I didn't mean to update that, so that might be a little longer than Councillor Dodge wants for her questions. This is looking at really the pathway to potentially bringing some forestry services back in-house, and kind of an opportunity to reset that division a little bit as well. So it might have to be separate than than Councillor Dodge's questions. But if we could include Q3 in there, I would be happy as a clam.
I'm just looking at Mr. Smith, but are you comfortable with Q3?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that I am, yes.
Okay, so Mr. Smith is comfortable with Q3 as the request for the timeline. Councillor Dodge?
Sorry, can I ask a follow-up to that then?
Of course.
With the situation that we've been talking about most recently with the forestry department, whether we keep it in or keep it out, will we be waiting to Q3 to just make that decision? Because I would think that if this is in there, or if we're waiting till then, we can't make a decision now about that. If we're waiting till Q3.
Yeah, Director Smith?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are in the midst of preparing a report, a memo, not a report for council. So they'll have that information available on Monday night. That should allow council to make a decision on whether they keep the current forestry services in-house. The reason I believe, and I stand to be corrected for Councillor Miller's request, was to look at additional services which are not currently in-house and bringing them back in-house. We've sort of separated the two questions at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dodge. Seeing no other questions, I will, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We don't need to call the roll for that. Committee and task force minutes. The council receive and file the minutes of the advisory committees of council as presented. A mover and a seconder. Councillor McPherson, Councillor Ratzlaff. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And now we look to the clerk to go off into closed session.
So there's 3 reasons to go into close. The first is Community Recreation and Culture Services, Indoor Tennis at Community Park Contribution Agreement, closed pursuant to Municipal Act Section 2392K, a position plan procedure, criteria instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or carried on by or on behalf of the municipality. Item 2, Financial Management Services, assessment appeals for 570 Glendale Avenue, closed pursuant to Municipal Act Section 2392E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality, and 2392F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And item number 3, contribution agreement update, closed pursuant to Municipal Act Section 2392H, information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality by Canada, a province or territory, or a crown agency of any of them.
Can I have a councillor move the motion to go into closed session for the reasons provided by the clerk? Councillor Stevens, Councillor Garcia, all those in favor? Opposed? Away we go. All right, we are back from in camera. So we have a couple motions arising from the closed session. The first one is 15.1, Community Rec and Culture Services Business Planning and Strategic Services Indoor Tennis at Community Park Contribution Agreement, moved by Councillor Townsend, seconded by Councillor Miller. This is all recorded, right? All right, so I will look to the clerk to call the roll on the Indoor Tennis at Community Park Contribution Agreement.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Lindell,
Yes.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff,
Yes.
Councillor Stevens,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Siska.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Item 15.2, Financial Management Services Billing Assessment Appeals for 570 Glendale Avenue, moved by Councillor Stevens, seconded by Councillor Phillips. I'll look to the clerk.
Councillor Stevens,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
Councillor Lindell,
Yes.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff,
Yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Sisko.
Yes.
And that's carried.
And 15.3, Chief Administrative Officer Contribution Agreement Update, moved by Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor Townsend. Can I look to the clerk?
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Lindell,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
Councillor Stevens,
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
and Mayor Sisko.
Yes.
That's carried.
Item 17 is bylaws, that the bylaws listed on the council agenda as A to H be read a first time, considered and passed, and that they be signed and executed by the mayor and the clerk. Mover and a seconder, Councillor McPherson, Councillor Ratzlaff, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Additional bylaw, that the following additional bylaw A be read a first time, considered and passed, the bylaw to authorize a contribution agreement with Tennis Canada, one reading with respect to indoor tennis at Community Park, to be considered by council January 15, 2024. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Phillips, Councillor Townsend, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And then finally, a motion to adjourn. Councillor McPherson, Councillor Stevens, all those in favor? Opposed? Good night.